coming over to the rack, the question was going to be, how did these guys go with no food for 10 days? Let's have a look at this rack. Now here are my long fins, and after checking yesterday, not a single loss, not one. These are my Yozakura golds. Now, what I am going to have to do over the course of the spring of next year, I'm just going to leave these guys for now as we start to wind down the spring season, is to start sorting these guys for colour, taking out anything that might not be favourable in terms of body conformation. But at the end of the day, these guys did incredibly well over a 10-day period with no food. Now, that is not what I would suggest. I pushed this a little too far. What I should have done is I had one of my neighbours come and just drop in some food. But our temperatures stayed above 60. We did get down to 61. Texas, typical for its 30 plus sometimes degree swings. So, you know, there's some warm days. There were some days in the 80s. And yet, these guys continued, look at the llama on some of these, have continued to thrive. I've got no sunken bellies. I even had, I don't know if you can see them, there's a little fry that even hatched. Here he is. Let's see if we can get him for you. No, we'll try and catch him. There he is. I can see him, but there he is. But the point of it is, there have been some fish, not only living, but also hatching and thriving in lower temperatures, again still in the 60s, but with no food other than what lives in the tank. Like I said before, I pushed this too far. I would not normally do this. I wouldn't recommend doing it. It's more just one of those things that just kind of got caught up in the usual hassle of getting out of the country on time and on track. But bottom line is, these guys are really doing well. And you know, the temperature's a little cool today, but you can just see these guys are just like puppy dogs, which makes them such a fantastic fish. They're incredibly resilient. They'll take change. They'll thrive in a variety of different water parameters, harder water, softer water. You know, they have parameters where they'll thrive, but they will adapt to a pretty broad range if you give them a chance. I've made mistakes with these guys before. One is which just exposing them to huge shifts too quickly. But you can tell if you give them a chance, they'll do really, really well. So that's the Yozakura. Let's see what's going on. This muddy area, I'm eventually going to put pea gravel down here. If I can get a few weekends where we don't have any rain as we get into Thanksgiving, it's going to be pea gravel all the way down here and around here. Okay, so here we have Titan tigers. Not a single loss, not one. I still am kind of blown away by this. These guys are a little bit more timid, but they got a nice little colour speckling of the orange and the black, and they're just doing great. Now, when I say they went without food, I have lids with access, not only for some, but for things like mosquitoes. So they have the benefit of living off mosquito larvae and other little critters that get in the water. Now, I did have one Kirameki pass on me, as you can see down there, which, you know, that falls on me. But the rest of them are doing well, and because I've got I even had some baby fry hatch out and survive during this period. So I've got my lava rock here at the bottom, and that's there just to create additional surface area so that the beneficial bacteria can continue to thrive and help the tub process all the usual nitrates, nitrites, and of course ammonia. But other than this one guy down here, who I'll remove shortly, everyone else is really just doing far better than I would have expected. So now we're back. You can't just feed these guys. You cannot just feed these guys. You've got to slowly introduce food to them. Otherwise, you'll cause digestive stress, which is really bad for their health and long-term prospects. But we'll start introducing them to some baby brine shrimp today, giving them a chance to reacclimate, get their systems cleared and going again, and then we'll continue to feed until we get below about 65. What really surprised me is this kind of dump tub, which is where these plants were before a storm hit. They fell over during the course of the evening. But I had these two fry that were quite small when I left, and they're orange longfin yohiki, and I was convinced that they would not make it, but they did. And again, this tub has no lid. You can see the reflection of the shade cloth there. But what that means is lots of bugs, lots of mosquitoes, lots of infusoria, and this tub will eventually be converted into a setup that looks like this. The fact of the matter is these two guys survived and have grown, put on colour and size. So it just goes to show just how incredible these fish really are if you give them the right parameters, access to live food, and they thrive outdoors. And they thrive outdoors because they need the seasons. You can't just breed these guys 24/7, 365. The seasons give their body a chance to rest and slow down, so that when spring hits, their bodies have actually had a chance to rest and they're ready to spawn. So 10 days no food, not recommended. Won't be something I do again, but at the end of the day, they came through it, and I'm going to have a stronger, more resilient line to breed from in the spring. Alright, so as I was driving over to get my coffee from the Human Bean in Carrollton, I was thinking about the video that I just showed you. Now, we got back from a trip to Australia where we were probably traveling for about 26, 27 hours, which is why I look horrible, and I feel it. But as I was driving over to get this coffee, I was thinking to myself, all right, what happened that changed between yesterday when I checked the tubs and all the fish were alive, and this morning where I had that one Kirameki pass, and it hadn't been there long, it wasn't there yesterday. What happened? Well, last night in Texas, as the seasons change, we tend to get more storms. Last night we had almost 2 inches of rain drop, and what that does is, yes, it adds fresh water to the system, but what it does is it changes the pH. And Medaka are an insanely tough fish. They will do well for you in a really broad range of parameters, whether that's harder water, softer water, whether that's a more alkaline pH, maybe 7.5, 8, or a more acidic water. They'll do reasonably well for you, but you got to give them a chance to acclimate. Where you go wrong, and where I've made this mistake in the past, is when you change any parameter quickly. So what happened last night was 2 inches of rain, rapidly changing the pH, and mind you, just one of the Kirameki strain passed away. And that's because I haven't buffered the water. So rain is good, makes our grass green, makes our plants grow, but when you dump a bunch of water in these tubs, what it does is it changes the pH. So to buffer the pH, one of the things you can do is put in like a meshed bag. Often you can get them on Amazon for, you know, not much. A little zip, and you put crushed coral into the tub. But like I said, you don't want to do a massive change, a massive dump of crushed coral all at once. So what I have been meaning to do, just hadn't got around to, because, you know, when you go on a holiday, you have to do a bunch of things. And one of the things I did was, I didn't arrange for someone to come and feed the fish, because mainly I just forgot. I have fed heavy in the days going up, so they were pretty healthy, which is, I think, what allowed them to get through. But next time I won't do that. Next time I won't leave them for more than about 3 days without any food. I'll arrange for my neighbour to come and just sprinkle a little bit of food into the tubs. The problem is sometimes people overfeed, especially when it's fun to see your fish feed. So that's, I think, one of my reasons for being reluctant. So next time I will not allow them to go that long. But also, as the seasons change, we need to start thinking about, okay, what's the rainwater going to do? And it's going to change your pH, and it's going to do so rapidly. Crushed coral is fantastic because it doesn't change your pH super quick, like a buffer that you might get from the store, like a fluval buffer. It will do so slowly as the crushed coral kind of slowly dissolves. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to buffer the pH, and it's going to buffer it in a way that's fairly temperate. But you also don't want to dump a whole bag of crushed coral in your tub. So I'm going to do probably a small amount in a mesh bag, and I'll do a video on that. And I'll just put that into the tubs in each of them, so that when we do get these big rain dumps, the water has been buffered to some extent, so that I'm not getting these huge pH swings every time I get a rain dump, because it's going to stress the fish out. I'm also going to monitor the pH over the next week and see what happens. I'm going to start small and scale up as I need to make sure that pH is fairly steady. The other thing you've got to remember is, in Texas, and I know this is unique, it's not unique to Texas. There are plenty of parts of the country that have really hard water. I know in the Northwest, Oregon, Washington, you tend to see softer water. In Texas, this stuff is like water cement, which is why there are some folks who keep cichlids, for example, that tend to do outstanding. But it's really hard here. So I don't want to dump in a bunch of crushed coral and make my water unnecessarily hard. That creates a whole bunch of flow-on effects, and it also changes the parameters in ways that aren't always helpful to Medaka. So I'm going to start with small amounts of crushed coral, monitor the pH over the next week to 2 weeks, 10 days, and see how it goes, to see whether I need to add in a little bit more, because I'm going to deliberately start small. But as our seasons change, so is our rainfall. And that is just something to keep in mind as you're keeping your Medaka outdoors. So this is just a quick message to the 3 people that watch it. I hope it's helpful. And yeah, have a great week.